Hi, this is Matt from Lapacek's Orchard, talking to you today about how to make some sauerkraut. Unfortunately, with our current situation, we can't have our sauerkraut days, but it's something you can make at home and it's pretty simple. All you need is a good head of cabbage from Lapacek's Orchard and some salt and a little bit of thyme, and you should be good to go. So first thing you want to do is take a look at your cabbage and peel off any of the large leaves that aren't going to shred very nicely. And then you're going to get it cleaned up. Once it's cleaned up, it'll look like this. The next step is to shred this into sauerkraut-sized pieces. There's a couple of ways to do that. The first and most simple way is just a simple knife. You just want to cut it into small, thin strips, just like you would expect in your commercially prepared sauerkraut. It does take a little bit of time when you're doing it by yourself, but really not that hard. You're looking to shred up about 5 pounds of cabbage at a time. So the one way, like I said, you can do it is with a regular knife. The other way you can do it is if you have a simple mandolin. That is another way to do that, and really it's a little bit quicker than your home knife and works nearly as well. Just remember that the size of the pieces is going to be the size of your sauerkraut. If you're looking to be even more efficient, if you have an at-home meat slicer, that should work as well. Set it to whatever size you're looking to do. Have at it. Again, nice slaw-sized pieces. Again, the size of the piece is up to you, or size of the kraut is up to you. Or, if you're exceptionally fancy, they do make sauerkraut cutters. This is essentially an old school mandolin with 3 blades already set up for your piece size. Or your slaw size, and it really just gets loaded up with the sauerkraut, and you will go through and cut it. You don't need to have any special equipment really. The kraut cutter is a little more work, but it does give a really nice consistent piece. Any of the other options work just as well. You do want to make sure that you don't cut off your fingers with these guys either, because they are sharp. And that gives a very fine slaw. Again, you're looking to measure out 5 pounds of sauerkraut. Once you've got your 5 pounds of sauerkraut, you're going to put them in a bucket or some kind of container where you can smush things around. Ideally, a food grade bucket is kind of the best thing you can do. And then you're going to sprinkle in 3 tablespoons of salt. Now this can't be your regular table salt. It should be either canning, pickling, or kosher salt, because you don't want any iodine in it. The iodine will mess with the fermentation process. Once you've got all 5 pounds of cabbage and the 3 tablespoons of cabbage together, we'll come back with another video showing you what you do after that. Alright, so we have our 5 pounds of cabbage with our 3 tablespoons of salt. With a fermented food, really you need enough water to cover the food itself. So the way you do this with sauerkraut is with some manual labor. So this is a good way of taking out some of your aggressions, and you are just going to go at the cabbage until you break it down and get a good amount of liquid out of the cabbage. It will kind of small when you do this, and you can see I have my assistant with me. Good job, Charlie. This will take probably about 5 minutes of pounding. The salt does help also pull out some of that that water, so you definitely want to make sure you have the salt in before you start the process of bruising the cabbage to get the water out. The salt is very important in the fermentation process. It helps to keep the liquid safe. So that is definitely really important. Again, the proportion is 5 pounds of cabbage to 3 tablespoons of pure salt. So we're going to work on this for a minute. We'll make sure that you get to see the finished product. And what was that? Rain tomorrow? Are you? So this has been beaten down. You can see that it's got some nice liquid to it. Where if you kind of put a hole in, you can see the liquid fills it up, and that's really what you're looking for with the pounding process. Once that's done, you can put another 5 pounds of cabbage and another 3 tablespoons of salt. Just know that the second and third rounds of salt and cabbage go a lot faster when the first round is done. Alright, so this is now 15 pounds of cabbage, all shredded. So there's been 3 5-pound loads of cabbage and 3 rounds of 3 tablespoons of salt. This is ready to go. You want to make sure, you can see here there's a lot of nice juice. And then sauerkraut is made through a process called anaerobic fermentation, meaning that air is the enemy. So your goal with sauerkraut is to keep the cabbage underneath the surface of the water at all times. There's a couple of ways you can do this. The old school method is to just put a plate upside down and weight down the cabbage. Sometimes people will put a full cabbage leaf on top of it, like so, just to kind of keep all the little shreds of cabbage out of there. That is an option. The other option is if you are doing this in a crock. A lot of times crocks will come with a weighted plate with a little hole in the center that you can set down. That's certainly a viable option. The other kind of newer, more modern method is to actually weight it with a plastic bag. So you take a food-safe plastic bag, you lay it on the surface, and then you fill that bag with a saltwater solution. I believe it is 6 tablespoons of salt to 1 gallon of water. The reason you want to put salt in that water that's weighting it down is that if there is a leak that happens, you don't want to change the saltiness or salinity of the solution. The salt keeps the bad germs from growing. So cabbage naturally will have all the probiotics necessary to make itself into sauerkraut. And then it gets stored. You want to check it a couple, once a week or whatever. You just kind of put it in a warm, dark, or decently warm, dark place. Usually about 65 degrees is ideal. If you do it too hot, you have to be a little more careful because it can go south on you a little bit fast, get a little sour, more than what you're anticipating. Or if you do it and it's a little more cool, it might take a little bit longer. So you kind of are aiming for about 60 to 65 degrees. It may take as much as 6 weeks. It kind of depends on what you want. You can always go in and taste it. You do want to, when you're looking at it, if there are little pieces floating on the top, either you want to skim those off because those will be a possible area for bad things to happen. Colors you don't want to see. You don't want to see anything black, pink, or blue on the surface. You can have a little bit of kind of white color on stuff, that's okay. If it's too much, you may have lost your batch. But again, the most important thing is really just to make sure that this cabbage stays underneath that salt solution. If it does start to evaporate a little bit, you can add a little bit more salt solution there. I believe there should be instructions on how to do that. And again, this is 15 pounds of kraut. It took about 4.5 cabbages. You know, obviously 15 pounds of sauerkraut is an awful lot of sauerkraut, so usually that's enough for a full year. When you're done with the sauerkraut, there's a couple of things you can do. So there's a few ways you can save that sauerkraut. Get back to my little spot here. So the sauerkraut can be then preserved. My favorite method for preservation is to put it in quart zip top bags, squeeze out the air, and then put it into your freezer. That will give you the best quality of the sauerkraut in terms of how much, how crispy it is and everything else. You can can it. I believe it's a water or boiling water bath canning is fine. Just know that that does kill all the probiotics that you work so hard to put into the sauerkraut. So if you're trying the sauerkraut for probiotic or health benefits, canned is not what you want to go with. You want really the fresh stuff. You can eat it fresh. It will keep for a while once it's done in the fridge. This is a lot of cabbage to keep in the fridge. I don't know that I would keep 15 pounds of sauerkraut around. Like I said, our method is usually just to put it in quart zip top bags and then store it in the freezer. We usually freeze them on a flat tray, and then they kind of stack up nice. So again, this is Matt from Lapacek's Orchard talking about making sauerkraut. Again, that cabbage is available at Lapacek's, and one load should last most families about a year. My family will end up doing 2 loads, and we'll go through almost all of that in a year. But it is pretty simple. It's just a little bit of work. You do get to take out some of your aggressions. Beating that sauerkraut, it does get easier. So if you get through the first 5 pounds and wondering what you got into, just stick in there. The second and third rounds of the 5 pounds go a lot faster. So that third round I think took me about 5 minutes. So